Welcome, everyone. We're glad to have you joining us for our From Goals to Growth, Actionable Career Planning for PhDs and Postdocs October workshop. My name is Dr. Kyle Ferris. I'm joined by Dr. Xuanmei Zhu, who is the Associate Director of the PhD and Postdoc Career Community, where I'm one of the career coaches as well here at WashU. This will be our recorded version of this workshop for those of you who are unable to attend the in-person session. So let's jump right in. Our goals for this workshop are for you to develop a greater self-awareness of your professional strengths, gaps, and interests. You'll be able to translate abstract goals into real-world strategies, create concrete time-bound next steps to build momentum. So we really want to make sure that you're coming out of this with a great idea of how to make those next steps in turning your goals into actionable items. For our agenda, we will have our quick welcome, and we're going to skip the icebreaker since this is a recorded session. We're going to talk a little bit about why just having goals isn't enough, and why you need to be setting good goals, and then how you bridge the gap between the goals and the actual work that you need to be doing. And then we will have some wrap up and next steps. So something to reflect on, we'd encourage you to think about what your biggest goal in your career is right now. Take a moment to think about that, write that down, and that will be an important guiding piece for the rest of this workshop. So let's talk about why goals themselves aren't enough. And the way we're going to do this is kind of through a case study. I'm going to talk a lot about my own experiences, and May will talk about her experiences to illustrate some of how we envision this process. So this is me and my partner. This is actually taken shortly after I moved to my first graduate program, my first PhD program. Um, and you can see me, I'm looking all happy there. It looks like I'm having a great old time. But there were problems kind of lurking under the surface with this. For my first PhD, I had a goal. The goal was become a professor, which on the face of it, you might think, cool, that's a great goal. Here's the problem, though. In terms of timeline, what was my timeline for anything? Who knows? I had no idea. What skills did I need to become a professor? I didn't know. What steps did I need to take in order to bridge from where I was to becoming a professor? I had no idea. No clue about any of this stuff. So as a result, what happened? By the end of my second year of my program, I had the lowest grades in my cohort. I had no advisor or committee, no prospective dissertation topics, no methodological expertise, no professional network, no job prospects, and I broke my leg. Now, technically, the leg is probably not the result of the planning or goal setting, but I like to lump it in there because it was not particularly fun. So let's talk about how we actually set good goals. Problem before was that I didn't have good goals set, and so I didn't have a great starting place. Some of you may be familiar with this. This is the SMART goal framework that we recommend using. So the way that you set a SMART goal is you describe a goal that is specific, so you know exactly what it is. It is well described. It's measurable, and this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be able to assign a number for it. What this means is you need to be able to know when you have accomplished the goal. It needs to be achievable. So this is something that you actually can manage to do, and this is what trips up a lot of people, especially postdocs and PhD students, because a lot of our PhDs and postdocs tend to be very ambitious, and sometimes the goals that are set are not always the most achievable goals. The goals need to be relevant, which means that they're things that you actually care about. This is the other place that messes people up a lot. It needs to be something that you want to do, that you care about doing, because otherwise you're not going to have the motivation to actually follow through on it. And then it needs to be time bound. So it has to be, you have to know what the time frame is for completing the goal, because otherwise you can put the goal off forever. It's like if you decide, oh, I want to get, healthy, I want to run a marathon someday. Well, someday could be any day. You have to have a very good timeline for understanding when the goal is going to be accomplished so that you can hold yourself accountable in the steps towards achieving that goal. So my example here, first PhD, right? I want to be a professor. Way too vague. It's not very specific. It doesn't have like a time frame on it. It doesn't have a great measure of success. And at the time, although I didn't recognize it, it wasn't particularly relevant for what I wanted to do. So for my second PhD, I set a much more concrete goal. I said, by the time I graduate, I will secure a tenure track position in a higher education department at an R1 institution. So you see, I'm much more specific here. I want to be a tenure track professor at a higher ed department at an R1 institution. That gets actually into relevance because I was more interested in the research element of things. I enjoyed teaching, but I cared a lot about the being able to continue on with my research trajectory. So much more specific, much more concrete, much more measurable, so that I was actually able to know when I achieved this goal. So I'm going to have you pause for a moment and put what we've just talked about into practice. I want you to develop a big picture guiding SMART goal that captures your professional aspirations. Again, think big on this one. So pause the video for a moment and take a few minutes to develop this big guiding SMART goal. So from there, we've got our goal, right? How do we bridge the gap? How do we get from goals to strategy? First, we want to think about what do I need? What skills will I need to achieve my goal? Do I need extra degrees and certifications or qualifications in order to achieve my goal? We also want to think about what we need in terms of network. Whose help will I need to reach my goal? Who are the people that I trust most to support me? These are important reflection pieces. We also want to think about our obstacles and our enablers. So obstacles are things that might stand in the way of my goals. And these could be, policies, they could be what the current state of the job market is, could be personal health, et cetera, et cetera. Enablers are things that will help me achieve my goals. So these are like special abilities or aptitudes, connections that you may have, educational advantages that you might have, things along those lines. So again, kind of applying this, thinking about how this went with my second goal to become a tenure track professor at a higher ed department. The skills that I had identified, I needed research, teaching, and service with a particular emphasis on the research side of things. And for networking, I would need my advisor, my committee, my family, and my peers. So let's have another little activity here, another brief activity. I want you to reflect on what skills and networks you will need in order to meet your goals. And here is the prompts for thinking about what you need on the skills and networking side. So take a few minutes to brainstorm that out. Once you've got that done, then on the next stage, take a few minutes to think about your obstacles, what might prevent you from achieving those goals, and particularly think about which of these obstacles can you control and which can you not. And then think about your enablers. What is going to support you or give you an advantage in this process? So take another couple of minutes on this. All right. So we've got our big goal. We understand what we need in terms of skills, in terms of networks. We've identified obstacles and we've identified enablers. So next stage is what concrete steps can you take to get from here to there? So I like to think of it this way. You can break this down really however you want, but I like thinking in terms of short term, midterm, and long term steps. So for short term, that might be by the end of the semester. Midterm might be by the end of the school year. Long term might be by the end of your PhD or your postdoc appointment. Again, you can think of this however you would like, but it's helpful to think about, what can I do more immediately and what kinds of things will need to be built upon as time goes on. It's also really important that each goal or step should build a skill, establish or strengthen a connection, address an obstacle, or encourage an enabler. So really draw upon what we have from those previous activities to inform what these steps are going to be. So for my strategy, short term, this was when I was first beginning in the program. By the end of the semester, I will discuss my career goals with at least three professors. So you see, that's kind of a networking, a connection-based thing. I will join my department's professional development committee and attend their monthly meetings. Again, that's pretty good on the connection side on developing a network, but also helps me build my service profile as an aspiring professor. Midterm, so by the end of the school year, I will submit at least two class papers to one of the main conferences in my field, which was, for my field, it was ASH or AERA. Uh, and those are both research skills that I'm developing, but also potential networking. I will apply for my college's summer research funding grant, again, to help support my research and also to demonstrate to future employers my ability to gain funding to support my work. For long term, by the end of my PhD postdoc appointment, I will teach at least one section of my department's leadership course in order to get some of those teaching skills. I will complete the requirements for the college's graduate certificate in qualitative research methods. And that was to, again, reinforce my research experience and my research profile. So now we are going to go to May, and May is going to talk about her strategy throughout her degree program and how she set herself up for success.
Hello, everyone. So I think I told some of you that my background is that I had a PhD in plant biology, and then I worked in industry for 8 years before I come to this role. So I'm going to share some of the strategy I have here. When I was a PhD student, I didn't spend that much time making goals, even though I have heard a lot about IDP, about SMART principle, but really I didn't designate the time to make plans, which now I think back, I regret a lot. I was actually quite productive in my PhD, but I can imagine if I make plans, I can even be more effective and productive. When I worked in industry, we really spend a lot of times to make goals. Our business goals, our personal goals every year, and we also need to do mid of the year evaluation, things like that. And that's how I really learned how to develop goals and how making goals can help us to become more effective. Actually, when I worked in industry, that many times I received top bonus or top performance award. So now I'm going to show you how I'm going to make goals. So if I start my PhD program again, this is how I am going to make my goals. Say like my long-term career goal is by the end of my PhD appointment, I want to secure a position in an agriculture technology company applying expertise in molecular biology and genome editing to advance crop innovation. And I'm going to set the goals in the three categories to enhance my skills. One is technical and research development, and second is really transferable skills, and the third one is career advancement and professional growth. Even though I'm going to spend different amount of time on each of those goals, 8%, 10%, and 10% respectively, those are all equally important strategically. And now I'm going to talk about them one by one. For example, when we talk about technical and research goals, I will probably say over the next 5 years, I will strengthen my expertise in molecular biology and genome editing by taking relevant classes. In the first 2 years, completing key experiments and collaborating across labs and institutions. Those goals can really help me enhance the skills and also establish collaboration, which is very important for industry. My goal is to publish at least 3 peer-reviewed papers. And this is very reasonable, right? I actually published more than 5 papers in my PhD, but setting 3 or really dependent on you. A different department may also have different requirement. So set a reasonable and achievable goal. And it can be first author papers or co-author papers. In academia, maybe first author paper is more important, but in industry, people pay almost equal amount of attention to co-author papers because that reflects you can teamwork, you can collaborate. And it's actually good to have a combination of both first author and co-author papers. Attend at least one major scientific conference every year, and I think many of the students also um, are likely are likely going to get fund to do this. But we really need to seize those opportunities, which we can talk more in future, how to leverage your conferences and present my findings in 3 oral sessions. I know it's relatively easy for students to do a poster presentation. And here I set my goals to do oral presentations because that is actually better opportunity to show my visibility and establish my reputation in this field. And also it's a great way to demonstrate I have good communication skills. And in the end, I had a sentence to tell me why I need to work on this goal, right? And these accomplishments will demonstrate my technical proficiency, communication skills, and research impact, all essential for success in industry. And whenever you find it is challenging to continue this goal, always go back to your why statement here, and hopefully that will motivate you to continue to pursue those goals. And then the second one is really about transferable skill development. And this is to develop other skills that are very important for industry as well. I will say something like this. With the next 5 years, I will enhance my leadership management teamwork skills by serving on an advisory board within WashU and or helping organizing a conference in WashU or in my professional society. So those are all reasonable goals. I will also complete at least one formal leadership or management training program. Actually, if you pay attention, there are many resources like that in WashU and also outside of WashU, and we can take advantage of those. And also take on mentoring, mentor undergraduate students or junior graduate students, or departmental service roles each semester. Maybe is to coordinate a speaker, maybe is to host a lunch event with other graduate students to discuss peer mentoring topics. As long as you pay attention, there are actually a lot of opportunities. These activities will strengthen my ability to lead projects, coordinate teams, and communicate effectively across disciplines, key skills for thriving in a collaborative, fast-paced industry environment. Again, all of those goals are following SMART principles. The last one is career advancement and professional growth. By the end of my 4th year, I will actively prepare for my transition to industry by engaging with the Center for Career Engagement, attending at least 10 professional development workshops. Again, this is very reasonable. And at our center, we really offer many different kinds of workshops that could potentially be helpful for you. And securing one internship in an agriculture technology or biotech company. Again, this is something you need to prepare in advance, have some conversation with your PhD advisor, but in many programs, this is reasonable. As long as you really make steady progress in your research, many times your PhD advisor will likely to support you. I myself managed to get an internship during my PhD as well. And if you have challenge in doing that, really talk to us and to see how we can support you in this process and also explore alternative opportunities. Through this experience, I will gain insight into industry workflows, building professional connections, and develop career materials that clearly communicate the value of my research and skills. Um, so those are examples how I'm going to set up the goal if I read it, my PhD. And of course, everyone is different. So hopefully this inspire you to develop your own specific development plan. And once you had the long-term goal, then it's relatively easy to determine the short and the middle-term goal. And you can see my long-term goal covering many different aspects. I don't have time to talk them one-to-one to tell you how to develop short-term and middle-term goal. So here I'm just going to give you one example, how to break down goals. For example, if my long-term goal is to serve as an official organizing committee member at my annual conference in my professional society, ASPB, American Society of Plant Biology. And those are my uh, how I'm going to set up my short-term goals. Year one is just attend the conference and understand its structures, such as sessions and organization, review the website and other materials to learn about the themes, abstract submission process, and the committee roles. And the second year is more actively participate in the conference, attend talks, networking sessions, engage with members over there, asking about orienteering opportunities. And then middle term goals is you maybe in year three, I'm going to apply to orienteer in the conference, maybe just be in charge of a very small part, such as reviewing abstracts, moderating sessions, things like that. And year four, I'm going to take a greater leadership role, help coordinate a student or poster event, really be in charge of that session instead of just being a supportive role. And then year five is really apply and hopefully we can be selected as a organizing committee member. So for everything, once you have a long-term goal, develop short-term and middle-term goal to pave the road to achieve the long-term goal. So really break down the goals and work toward your goal. And sometimes even if you didn't achieve your final goal, when you move forward your goal, you can make so much progress, gain so much skills and experience in this process. That's why I really want every one of us to be goal driven. And here, just give you two more examples. When I was a PhD student, I was able to go to at least one conference every year, but I really didn't leverage it very well. I just go there and meet any person I met over there randomly and sometimes give a poster or oral presentation. Other than that, I didn't do much. But now if I do it again, I'm going to make this type of goal. Network at ASPP conference by researching attendees before going to the conference, introducing myself to at least 5 speakers and 10 poster presenters. And if I did research about them when I introduce myself to them, it will be much easier and natural to have follow-up conversations and to get to know each other more. And visiting at least 5 industry booths at the conference. And those are some of the people maybe from the marketing department. However, once you know one person in that company, it is easier for you connect to other teams. For example, the team lead or director in the research and development department. And also setting up at least 3 follow-up one-to-one meeting after the conference. So once we set up those goals and we work toward it, you are just going to be so much more productive, and you will grow more. One last example here is become a teaching assistant. Again, when I was a PhD student, when I was a TA, I just do whatever my professor asked me to do. I don't have any goal, and I really didn't benefit it too much from that experience. However, if I'm going to do it again, I'm going to make this as my goal. Serving as a teaching assistant by delivering at least one guest lecture and providing customized support to students. achieving an average evaluation rating above 9 out of 10. So this is very clear, it's very achievable. If I set a goal to say I'm going to get this rating, I'm going to send out the survey and collect feedback from students. And this is something that I can write my resume. Again, when you have a clear goal, it's easy to describe that experience in your resume, in your interview, or even in your work report to your PI or to other colleagues. So with that, I will just transition back to Kyle to continue this presentation.
All right, so let's take some time for another activity here. I want you to take a few minutes and develop at least three short-term goals, two midterm goals, and one long-term goal for you to help set yourself up for this next stage of advancing towards your ultimate career goal. Now let's talk a little bit about revisiting, because what if life happens, right? Things are going to happen in your life that you didn't plan for, and they may interfere with your goals. So it's really important to regularly revisit your big picture goals, especially to see if they are still achievable and relevant. A big way to do this is to go back to your why. So if you get to a stage where you are really uncertain about where you're at and what you're doing, you're not sure if it's the right place anymore, go back to your why and ask, does this goal still align with my professional values, interests, and needs? If the answer is yes, then it means that we need to recommit. If the answer is no, then it means we need to pivot. To recommit, we want to revisit our medium and short-term goals. It may be that the goals or the steps need to change a little bit. It may be that the initial assessment and the initial evaluation of what you needed to do in the medium and short term is no longer applicable or needs to adjust. Revisit your skills assessment. Make sure that you are still developing the skills that you need to in order to move toward that long-term goal. Identify any new barriers that may have emerged since you last did this exercise, and find new enablers, community, increasing your health, building better habits, things that let you do your work more easily and more successfully. Now, if the answer to that question before, if it's no, if it is no longer, the big goal is no longer relevant to your professional values, interests, and desires, then we might need to pivot. And when we pivot, we want to reflect on what has changed about your interests. What is new, what's different than from before. And based off of that, create a new big picture SMART goal and reiterate this process. Go back through the steps of this process with your new goal in mind. So I can just share with you some stuff that happened to Kyle in my second PhD program. COVID happened in the second year of my program, threw off all kinds of stuff, having to pivot to a totally virtual format in my program. My grandparents died. I was very close with them, and they were a big part of the reason why I'd gone back to graduate school. As a result of both of those things, my mental health declined pretty badly. I was diagnosed with autism and had to start dealing with everything that I learned about myself and the different sort of unhealthy habits I picked up over the years and trying to suppress that. I had to then drop off of several research projects. I also started learning about the colonial history of higher ed, which changed my relationship to higher ed quite a bit. And I went through my first peer review process on an article, which was just the worst thing. I had never encountered something I disliked quite as much as having to deal with the peer review process. And so with all of this kind of coming into mind, my reevaluation of like, do I really want to be a professor, a tenure track professor in an institution of higher education? Honestly, not really. So for my pivot, I revisited those values and skills. I was concerned about the negative impacts of college. I didn't really think that I wanted to be a professor. But at the same time, I wasn't really ready to leave higher education. I didn't enjoy academic research, but I did still enjoy working with students. And so as a result, I decided that I would transition into student services roles, preferably in career services, with the goal of becoming a director or dean. And so that's where I've been at for the last few years since I've made that pivot. And I periodically revisited my big goal to again ask, is this still relevant to me? And I've gone through these exercises again. So it's really important that you go through that revisiting process and see if you need to pivot or recommit to where you're at. And it can be tough, especially if you decide that you need to pivot and you need to do something different. But that's one of the things that we're here for to help support you. And we hope this framework has given you some tools that can aid you in that process. So for wrap up here, we really encourage you to attend our other workshops and our other featured events. We have more workshops this fall and a lot of workshops coming in the new year. And we have our speaker series, our virtual career exploration speaker series, that we have a December one coming up with Dr. Beth Fiore, and we will have new ones coming up next semester that we will announce once we have those solidified. So we encourage you to attend our events and get as much as you can out of your experience and out of what we have to offer here. We also encourage you to set up one-on-one appointments, read our newsletter, and check out the resources that we have available online. If you would like to get in contact with any of us, this is our team and our contact information. We are all more than happy to talk with you and to help you in whatever way that we can in making sure that you're able to achieve those goals that you've set for yourself. So thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing you at future events and coaching sessions.